First one, what should have been very obvious. This is simple interest, and when that happens, your time has to be set to a fraction out of 365 to turn it into years. Some of you forgot to turn your uh, percentage into a decimal, so watch out for that. So this is the interest you've earned. Some of you use this formula, right? This one. There's nothing wrong with this one, but you just have to know that when you solve this, you're not finding the interest, you're finding the total value of your investment. So 37 plus 58.26. So you would have to subtract what you invested to get your interest if you use this formula. So it's not completely wrong. You still got partial marks. Next was still simple interest. And some of you were thrown off maybe by the flat rate. Charges, finance charge, right? That's the interest you get charged. You had to turn your 3 months into years, and then the interest was replaced by substituted into I, and then everything else was given. R is unknown, but when you solve that as a percentage, it's this. If it doesn't, it says state as a percentage, so I did want it in this format. Next, using the compound interest formula, you have to have this on your study sheet. I think some of you missed this one. It's 1 plus rate divided by n, the compounding periods, and then it's times nt. So the compounding shows up twice. T is in years, okay? So to get that right, I had to see that. And then to get the interest, did ask for interest, you just go your final amount minus what you started with to get your interest earned. Okay. So just read and make sure you answer the question. Rule of 72, you could have done it either way. You could have said, hey, if it's a 10% interest rate, 72 divided by 10%, not turned into a decimal, that's important, it would take you 7.2 years. Or if you said, hey, if you want it in 6 years, 72 divided by 6, you would need an interest rate of 12%. So you could have used either approach to make your point. Okay. Okay. That one is without compounding. Like if compounding is yearly, this is the one. I actually get rid of this. Just use that one. Okay. If compounding is any other than one, then it has to be the one with the n. Good question. You caught it. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes I saw. So, what did I see here? I I saw some of you putting 18,300 in previous value, present value, sorry, and 8,000 on the or future value, or vice versa. Not that it has to happen right here. Whatever loan or mortgage you're taking, subtract the down payment right here. This is what we call the loan. Okay, you're borrowing anything you don't have. How's that? You're borrowing what you don't have. You have 8,000, but you don't have 10,300. So you go ahead and borrow that. Your future value on loans, you know what? I cannot think of an exception. I cannot think where it's not going to be zero. But future value should be zero, right? You don't owe anything anymore at the end. So that's probably one of the most common mistakes. Interest, you take your pick. You want to use the sum of interest app, or do you want to use the formula? That's up to you. You get about the same. It's very close. You just got to show me your work. You know what I saw here a lot is double dividing by 100. I saw you wrote down 1 minus 0.12 over 100. Then you're double dividing by 100, right? Because if you turn this into 0.12, that's already divided by 100. So don't go ahead and divide it one more time. And it's minus, right? 1 minus 0.12. So this thing is depreciating. Depreciating. and therefore there's a minus there. So you subtract the rate. So you end up with this much in value when it comes to a car. Here is the very badly worded question, in my opinion. A was good. So you were allowed to drive 20,000 kilometers per year, and this is a 5-year lease. How do you know? It says right here, 60 months. So you're allowed 100, you drove 115, we subtracted to get our, this is what we're over, okay? Over by. So then you take that, multiply it by 8 cents, you get that, multiply it by 1.12 because you have to tax it. So I gave you 1 mark for the 15,000 and 1 mark for adding, multiplying it by 8 cents and adding taxes. What I meant to say here, and the space wasn't even great here, but I kind of wanted to say, hey, if you were to lease and then buy it, like add up everything, like, because technically that's how much you spend overall. Even if you buy it at the end, you spend 40,000. So I went purchase, I added 12%. Total lease is your down payment plus all of the payments, and you have to add taxes here, plus the 1344, which I already calculated. That's your mileage. I add up all of those numbers, I get 26,692. What I do next is I add the total lease and the purchase. So I add these two numbers to get me the total lease including purchase, which is 40,132. Yes. And then the loan, can you just make a note? Don't add taxes to your loan payments. Because when you take out a loan, that loan already has the taxes in it, right? The car has already been taxed. You can't buy a car without paying taxes. You can't do it. Okay. So you got to take your down payment and add 60 payments of 545.60. That's right here. Okay, for 60 months. And so I add those two. So this is how much you really paid at the end of the loan. Okay, so you've got, so I made it worth 3 altogether, 2 for the lease, 1 for the loan. Okay. Next, give reasons other than the kilometer limit consideration why Mariella might want to buy a car, right? So you can say she can customize it, payments will eventually stop, no charge for wear and tear, yada, yada, yada. Right? Next, question 7. This is a straightforward mortgage question. So again, this is your down payment. Some of you need to make note of this. You write this down. Okay, 375 minus 35. This is your mortgage. And because you're paying it off, eventually you want it to be 0. Your future value is 0. I think you also need to make sure that the signs are correct, especially when it's investing time. We'll talk about that. But here it's positive because the bank is giving you the money to buy your house. That's why it's positive here. And then the payment is negative because those leave you and go to the bank every month. I think some of you need to review your semi-monthly. I had some weird numbers here. So I had some 6s. I guess you went, half a year. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but just make sure you understand semi-monthly is 24. And then the balance done well. So I would have honored whatever you got up here. If I saw a balance of 120 and I saw a number that made sense, you got the mark there. Here is an appreciation scenario. You got to use the value of the home, not the mortgage. Make note of that. Okay. 1 plus interest rate to the power of 5. And so I really wanted to see the 417,900. And then because it's asking for equity, you subtract what you owe after 5 years. So there we go. 120 is your 120,000 is your equity. Next, you had your principal. So some of you actually used this one. Doesn't happen very often, but I feel like you must have seen it when you did the homework. at one point. So the principal, this is how much you actually paid off. Or you could have gone 340 minus what you owe in 5 years. So you paid off, it's the same no matter which way you go about it. Some of you said, hey, it's 120 payments of 917, right? 120 payments of 917. And that's not correct because every month some of this payment goes towards interest. And I'll give you a visual on that later on. I don't know what happened here. Some of you had all the entries correct, but you got the wrong interest rate. You got either was slightly off or completely off. So I don't know what happened, but I gave you at least 1 mark if all the entries were correct. Notice that your payment is negative, so you had to make sure that was a negative. And again, I go 270 minus the down payment, so your mortgage is 240,000. Okay. And your interest rate is 390. Why would she, whether buying or renting, right? Make a recommendation why she should buy or keep renting. So it would have been either or. She should buy since it will allow her to build equity. She should rent since utilities are usually included or something like that. Or maintenance is low. Okay. Lower. Maybe stay away from no maintenance and just be safe and say lower maintenance. You know what I mean? Because I think light bulbs you have to pay if you're renting, as far as I remember. So if a light bulb goes, technically that's not zero in terms, it's very little. Page 9, this one you have to pay attention. This is where things started to, this is my bad as well. I threw in a 64 and all of a sudden I throw in a 65. I changed it to 64 already, but anyways, so I honored either one. So if you use 65, you would have had 41 years. So your payment, your contributions have to be 215. Almost nobody went with 40 years, which is understandable. That would have been 227. So it doesn't matter. I accepted both. If that's my bad, I take that one. For B, make sure you do your TVM solver again, okay? Especially on the exam. Don't just say, hey, it's now this, because you made one change. Make sure you show me your TVM solver. And here, make sure everybody take note of this, because I think everybody needed that extra. It's compound interest. And it's an exponential growth or relation. Okay, so because it's not linear, if something is linear, it'll take you 10 years to get to half, another 10 years to get to the end. Like it'll be the same no matter what. But because of the compound interest, it's an exponential relation. It doesn't just, it's not the same amount of time that goes by from one to the other. Okay, so that's something that I wanted to see there to get the full marks on that one. Okay. All right, next. What's happened here? Remember, what's rate of interest? It's anything you earn over invested times 100. That's what rate of return really is. And so how do you know what you earned? You subtract your starting and your end amounts. So you earned 79,952, and this is how much you started with, right? It's almost like this is what you started with, and that's what we go as your investing, as your investment, right? So you get 29.45% there. Make note of that. Explain why you might prefer the investment in a stock portfolio or the GIC. GIC is safer. Okay, so I wanted to see it's GIC is way safer, but it doesn't make as much as a stock investment. Okay, so you could have said either stock is It's locked in, so that might be a downside. That's why you don't want to be in the stock market, because a GIC is locked in, so you can't access those funds. You could have also said that it's not as safe. Or some of you said, no, put it in the stock market because there's higher risk, but there's also higher reward. Another reason why you would have said GIC rather than stock is, oh, I did mention safer. And as you get closer to retirement, you don't want to risk too much because you don't have the time to build up what you've lost. Okay. Then the GDSR, all that stuff, I skipped it, but now you should know how to do it. And here's the bonus, okay? Which wasn't a bonus, it was an actual question because you knew how to do it and you had the time. Okay, watch what I'm highlighting. Some of you forgot, right, that for both investments, there's a big chunk deposited and it's negative. These two combine to $20,000. I actually tell you that in the boxes, right? You're putting 12,500 in here, you're putting 7,500 in there. One is biweekly, one is monthly, and the compounding periods are different as well. But for both of them, you had to figure out what the future value is, right? That was what this question A was all about. Like, tell me how much will be in there in 5 years from now. And remember, your contributions are negative here. And in this case, you have no payment. So if there is no payment, that's zero. PY is the same as CY. So those are the two numbers I wanted there for you to get the 2 marks. And here's where it changes for B. I'm taking both of these, okay, both of these values, and I just plot them into the RSP, right? Yeah, I put them in the same account. So you combine them, and that is negative, folks, okay? Your present value is negative, and you continue to make $115 contributions there. So both of those are negative. If I take the 20 years that are left by the biweekly, that's 520, right? I do not meet my target of, I'm short couple, like 20 something thousand, right? So this is just to show it's not good enough. Next, I go and I change the future value to 350. I figure out the payment required to make that meet my goal. Okay. Some of you skipped this one. You went straight to here. I actually found that brilliant. Okay? That is probably a lot more efficient than what I did here, because you can go backwards and right away it's like, hey, 350 is my goal. What's my payment? And you can tell it's higher than what it's currently set at, right? 115. So I need to make changes. I need to increase my payment. And here it is. I subtract the payment required by what I was doing. So you need to increase it by 1824 to make sure you get that right. And rate of return, which was probably the biggest pain. Look at the orange part, sorry, not the orange, the green highlighted numbers. I figured out the interest here. I figured out my interest that I earned here for the 2 accounts. I also figured out the interest earned here for after I've combined them. So these are my 3 interests that I'm adding here. All the earnings I've made so far. And then I put in everything, I divided by everything I've put in out of my own money. 12,500, 7,500, the 14,950, what is that? Those are the $115 bi-weekly contributions that I've made up here. So I went 130 times 115 to get me that. Okay. And what is this part right here? That is the 43,165 plus I've made 520 payments of, I'm guessing I went 133.24 here. Yeah, here is 520, 133, 24 to get me that part. So all the interest, all the money that I've put in, you divide that, you get 235.78% combined rate of return. So this is something, this one is probably one of the more difficult questions. I'm not going to lie, but still the idea and the principle stays the same. Okay? Find your earnings, find all the money you've put in out of your own pocket. You divide that and you see, right? This is where I started. This is where I ended up. So what's that ratio there? Okay. All right. You can put these away. If you have any questions about it, come and see me.